great pleasure of introducing our next keynote. Our next keynote is Brittany Kirkpatrick.
And hi all, I'm Brittany Patrick with Umoja Collective.
I'm so excited to have you here. Brittany holds a Bachelor of Arts in Speech Language Pathology, which to me is just near and dear to my heart, a speech pathologist. Myself being someone who has struggled all my life with speech, and my daughter inherited that from me. And to be completely honest on that. So I've always had a special place in my heart for speech pathologists and fellow special educator teacher. So we have that in common. And this is something that's just amazing. You're a doctoral candidate in the Department of Special Education at the University of Maryland, College Park. So you have been able to study the intersection of disability, race, and culture in K-12 education settings. And I am just so thrilled. I'm so excited for yours, just because it brings so many of my back. I know personally. I mean, I know people here too, but personally, I'm so excited because it brings so much of my background, my passion. And so I'm going to stop gushing and fangirling here. And I'm going to go ahead and add your slides up here for you. And I'm going to you take it away.
The sweetest introduction. This totally feels like family. Hey, everyone in the chat. I see you. Anne Marie, Steph, Megan, Bridget, I'm excited too. And SLP, awesome. Hi, family. I'm glad you all are here. So today, as we are talking, I want you to think of yourself as a part of one big classroom. Visualize me as your teacher and you as the student. Wherever you are in the world, I want you to prepare to turn inward today. Reflect on your lived experience and how the messages you may have received throughout your life may or may not be feeling challenged through today's talk. You might expect to feel a little bit of tension in today's learning community. Maybe you'll want to learn more about a particular concept. Maybe you'll want to disagree. However you feel, it's my hope that you walk away from today with a commitment to the Outschool community and to growing your understanding of neurodiversity and neurodivergence. So let's jump into it. Today's talk is titled Cultivating Inclusive Learning Communities, a Self-Reflective Journey on Ableism and Neurodiversity. And before I keep going, I want to give a proper introduction, not only to myself, but an accessible introduction. So my name is Brittany Patrick. She, her pronouns. I'm owner and founder of Umoja Collective. We're a national education advocacy and consulting firm. I'm an African-American woman, and I have long Black hair, brown skin. Today, I'm wearing a gold blazer with a Black shirt, and behind me is a dark gray wall with several framed pictures. As an education advocate, a parent advocate, former special education teacher and leader, I was super excited when Outschool reached out to me to be in community with you guys today, because I get to share what I've learned along my own education journey and experience with other parents and educators just like you. So with that being said, while we're together today, it's important for me that you engage as best you can. I welcome you to talk in the chat, respond, question, share, like one another's comments if you agree or if something resonates with you. But I'm asking that we, again, engage respectfully and honor the humanity of one another, our experiences and opinions. If you are with me, I need you to type in the chat right now, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm looking for them. If you're with me, type in the chat, I'm with you. All right, Aaron. Awesome. So in today's session, I'm going to embed some simple strategies to support all learners. For example, clarity in the day's plan. So today I'm going to introduce the concept of neurodiversity. We're going to talk about what it is. We're going to talk about what it entails. And next, we're going to talk about the different models of disability. This is really what influences how we approach and view disability. We're going to even talk about the relationship between neurodiversity and disability. And right after that, we're going to hop into understanding ableism. We'll get into similarities and differences of these big constructs of race and disability. And lastly, we're going to walk away today making a commitment to chart our path forward in embracing neurodiversity in our homeschool and virtual school communities. All right, guys, let's go. I see all that I'm with you, so I trust we're together in this. So for this particular session, if you're able to access a writing utensil, that would be great. And then my Outschool family posted a link to an interactive handout. If you'd like to use that, you're welcome to. But it's just to support your engagement, and it's totally optional. I'll give you about 10 seconds if you need to grab a writing utensil or if you need to download that PDF. All right, guys. So let's respond in the chat. How familiar are you with the terms neurodiversity and ableism? How familiar are you with the terms neurodiversity and ableism? Maybe it's like a little, I've heard of them, not super familiar. Okay, very familiar. Wow. Familiar, but can always learn more. Familiar with both. Awesome. I love the spirit of consistent learning. So let's really define neurodiversity, family. So the term neurodiversity was coined by an Australian sociologist by the name of Judy Singer. It is not a medical term. I want us to keep reminding ourselves that the term neurodiversity has nothing to do with a medical term. This term actually came about when the self-advocacy movement for autistic people and people with autism was coming about. And the goal here was to really empower and show folks that neurodiversity is simply a part of the human experience. Depending on how our brains are wired, we think, move, process information, and communicate in different ways. It's just a natural thing. It's just a natural thing. So today, I want us to do a quick activity. Another emerging term to describe neurodiversity is learner variability. And when we say learner variability, one of the ways learners vary in their thinking and perceptions is in how we process, right? How we view information, how we perceive. This is why if you have more than one homeschooler, one may learn totally different from the other. So we're going to do a simple activity related to diversity of thought. And either you're going to want to use your pen during this time to draw around these two objects, or you can use your imagination. But what I want you to do is draw around these objects to think about the different photos you could make. So you're either imagining, drawing, you're actually drawing. Maybe you want to get a penny and a quarter and actually put it down on a piece of paper. If you can make a photo out of these, take about 30 seconds. What would you draw? Right now, you're either drawing, imagining drawing, take about 10 more seconds. I'm winking at Mrs. Thorne in the chat. I will say I'm not the best artist, but I'm going to be vulnerable in this space and share what I thought to draw. This is my best version of a puppy. This was just what came to mind. Write in the chat what you thought to draw. What did you draw, or what did you think to draw? My puppy's clearly missing a tail. I'll also show, while you guys are writing in the chat what you thought to draw, I'll show my second thought. Notice it was totally different. Oh, how did a race car? I'm looking at the chat, guys. A face, infinity sign, a friendly ice dragon, a windmill, coins in a child's hand, earth. Look at this diversity of thinking. My brain can't even fathom how some of you were able to conceptualize and visualize that type of drawing. A telescope, abstract design, rocket ship, flowers. Wow. You guys have floored me with my own activity. The truth is, I hope that you see in the chat and through this activity that we can all see something and perceive or think something totally different. That is a perfect example of diversity of thought. And it's a perfect example of how our learners vary in their perceptions and thought processes as well. Unfortunately, school historically has been designed to accommodate learners that process and perceive in, we'll say, similar monolithic ways, right? School historically has not been designed to foster diversity of thought. A neurodivergent learner's brain processes information in a way that's not typical of most. This is through a neurodiversity lens. When we embrace neurodivergence, we see neurodivergence as a normal part of the human experience. We create environments that show that we believe that thinking differently is a normal thing. We all think, process, learn, behave differently. Accepting this reality is embracing neurodiversity. Whew, Dr. Cafferly said standardize. Ick, I agree. Let's talk about a few facts on neurodiversity and neurodivergence. An estimated 1.3 billion people, or 16% of the global population, experience a significant disability today. But between 10 and 20 of the global population is considered neurodivergent. The most recent research shows about 1 in 44 children has been identified with autism. And some sources estimate that of the 15% of the population who are neurodivergent, 50% of those are unaware. I like to say that I don't know many people who are not neurodivergent in some way, shape, or form. Because the reality is, we live in a neurodiverse world. Is there any fact here on this page that surprises you? If so, just pop it in the chat. Anything here that you're like, really? Huh? Or I don't know about that. Making your classrooms a safe place for children to question and disagree, making your learning spaces a safe place for children to express themselves is a key to embracing neurodiversity. All right, Dr. Cafferly, seems normal to you. Thanks, Mrs. Thorne. Unaware. Yeah, Catherine. Absolutely. In our next two slides, we're going to talk about neurodivergence versus disability. And I want to be very clear that I just said versus. Neurodivergence versus disability. I often get and hear the question, is being neurodivergent a disability? Now step back in your self-reflective state. Is being neurodivergent a disability? I see you, Tracy. Ingrid. Is being neurodivergent a disability? Nope. That's what Dr. Cafferly says. So I'll give you my professional opinion. When we ask ourselves if neurodivergence is a disability, I'd say no. One, neurodivergence isn't a medical term. However, what we can say is sometimes neurodivergence may coexist with a disability. Okay, but is it the same? I'd say no. Neurodivergence doesn't always coexist with a disability. Okay, we got some different thoughts. Very interesting comments in the chats here. So far, we've talked a lot about terms, guys, and that's because words mean things. How we have been taught to see and view disability and human difference, it's really what molds and shapes our perspectives and our views and also our biases. These in turn influence our actions. So when we're talking about embracing a neurodiverse learning community, there are two common views of disability and difference that I want us to be aware of today. We're going to talk about the social model of disability, and we're going to talk about the medical model of disability. Oh, Cat B is on to me. I see you in the chat. In the medical model of disability, we see the individual as problematic and impaired. So when we think of them, we're thinking they're doing things wrong. They have to learn how to do things better or how the rest of us do them. We need to do blank to fix them. Well, if you're a doctor and you're trying to save a person's life from a certain impairment or medical condition, focusing on a cure is probably the best way to go, right? However, This isn't always the best way to go when we're talking about educational spaces. The medical model of disability sees physical, mental, behavioral, and or sensory differences as oftentimes problematic and needing of fixing or changing. Okay. So oftentimes, if we're in our classrooms, our homeschool spaces, the medical model of disability might sound like, or you may be thinking things like, Gary can't pay attention for more than 60 seconds. Alan has an issue with his hands, so he can't type. Hearing impairment. This is a medical term. Tatiana has a problem making and keeping friends in class. Speech language impairment. They're handicapped, right? These are not terms. These are not phrases. These are not thoughts that are supportive of embracing neurodiversity and neurodivergence. This is typically how we use and see the medical model of disability popping up when we're serving children with differences, which essentially is all children. So let's really talk about the social model of disability, because when we're embracing neurodiversity, it's important for our community to understand the social model of disability. In learning communities, when we apply the social model of disability, we see the environment and society as problematic, not the learner. In learning communities, when we apply the social model of disability, we use person-first language, which we're going to practice later today. And we also look at and examine barriers in our environment early and often, continuously. Is the learning environment, is the social environment accessible? Within the larger organization, are there barriers present? While it might not be an organization in your case, it might be your family as the organization. Sorry, had to whisper that one because that one might kind of bite a bit. But we have to acknowledge barriers in the learning environment when we apply the social model of disability. And this is because neurodivergence is normal. We live in a neurodiverse world, and we are responsible for delivering and designing accessible, inclusive home and online environments. So let's take a look at this brief visual. It illustrates the difference in what I just spoke about. Very simply. I see lots of comments in the chat. Maria says, as a retired SPED teacher, what I found was that people forget to look at the different abilities. I agree, Maria, because everyone absolutely has strengths. Now, after what we've just spoken about, now that you know this, now that you've been refreshed on this, think about your virtual or homeschool environment. And I really just want you to take a second to think about what are some barriers that may exist for your learner or learners in your or a virtual classroom or homeschool space. What are some common barriers that might exist? I welcome you to pop them in the chat. What are some barriers to online communities, to homeschool spaces? Dr. Kafferly is really trying hard to remove barriers in his live online spaces. Maria is really needing space to move around in that learning area. Same age peers. Wow, Joyce. Desks, barrier for lots of children. Checking in visually, being required to do that is tough for some kids. We're identifying some barriers here, guys. Wow. Megan, the stationary bicycle desk so he can move and learn. That's totally something that we want other Outschool family members to be aware of and conscious of. Ingrid, expectations need to be different for each person. Might not be able to have long classes, and that's okay. We need more active activities, more individualized support, accessibility. You guys are thinking in the right direction. This is the spirit of embracing diversity, really thinking about our spaces and how they are not accessible to certain learners. Now, at the beginning, I spoke about us jumping into and understanding the concept of ableism. Ableism is defined as the practices and dominant attitudes in society that devalue and limit the potential of a person with a disability. Now, when we think about the concept of ableism, I really want us to think about it in terms of this math problem per se. Isms of any type come about when people combine their prejudice and assert their power. Okay. Prejudice is actually defined as favoring or dislike of something without good reason. A prejudice in the world of neurodiversity is favoring a learner that sits in a chair the entire time, right? Do you really have good reason to favor the learner who sits on the movement bicycle desk? An example of prejudice is favoring a learner who might not engage in stemming behavior, right? Disliking a student's stemming behavior. Depending on that behavior, if that student is safe, do we have good reason to not like it, to assert our power to stop it? Another example of prejudice within this community and the disability community often is disliking the fact that a learner may use assistive technology to communicate. Do we really have good reason to dislike that? Prejudice is a favoring or dislike of something without good reason. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves, do we really have good reason for favoring or disliking the way this learner thinks, behaves, or processes? Or are we just asserting our power because we're a part of a group who may not share that same trait? We may not learn, think, or behave in that way. When we use our power over an environment or a learning experience because it's a preference of ours, we have to consider if ableism is at play. And I want to break this down just a little bit more, guys, because I see you guys really popping in the chat examples. So let's unpack this. Prejudice can show up in our classrooms as, in our learning spaces as stereotyping, stigmatization, making a child uncomfortable, even pity. Denise, I love that. Bottom line in the chat, ask ourselves, is the learner learning? And are they safe? Right? A lot of times, if we're running our homeschool classroom or we're running a virtual homeschool classroom, we have power in these types of ways. We have power over the classroom community oftentimes. I have power over how much agency I allow learners to have in the classroom space or their learning space. Do they have a choice of what they want to do today, the order in which they would like to do it? We have power over their choice and what we allow them to choose in the learning space. Oftentimes, we assert our power. We have power over the design of the lesson, of the space, how accessible it is, and our homeschool environment. So I want you to think about, in your classroom, in your virtual homeschool space, is there any way that you are asserting your power over your learner because of your preferences without good reason? This is a great way for us to check ourselves when it comes to creating spaces that are accessible and that embrace neurodiversity. Dr. Cafferly said something important about ensuring that students enjoy the learning process. Believe it or not, Dr. Cafferly, some people don't see enjoyment as a necessary right of learning. I hope we all do here. It's important for kids to enjoy. We have power over creating spaces where they can enjoy the learning. So I want to talk just briefly on this slide about short-term, long-term, and immediate results of ableism. Because when we are a part of perpetuating ableist learning environments, we ultimately are perpetuating a system and community and world where folks with differences, folks who are considered differently neurodivergent, not neurotypical, are subject to these things. Stereotypes, violence, institutional mistreatment. These results don't always show up directly in the classroom, but when we look at the facts on poverty, on literacy, on homelessness, on police brutality, on access to social services, people with disabilities have long been subject to stereotyping, to violence, and to institutional mistreatment. So when we talk about embracing neurodiversity in our world and space, we are actively working to disrupt this dangerous result of ableism. In our classrooms and spaces, I want you to be conscious of thoughts, words, feelings like this. She needs to grow out of blank behavior. He's just being lazy. She doesn't act like she has. He can't do blank because his IQ is. He just needs to be disciplined more. We could have a whole nother presentation on the effects of ableism on disciplinary practices and how so many neurodivergent learners are subject to discipline, harsh, unnecessary discipline, as a result of us not embracing diversity in behavior and thought. Okay. I see the word flexibility in the chat. Super important. Wow, Megan. Wow. I work with parents around the country who are fighting for their neurodivergent children who are being subject to unfair disciplinary practices. The number of parents I've spoken with who have chosen homeschooling for this very reason. Today, I feel like in our community, we're disrupting the status quo. We're committing to no longer being a part of this, perpetuating ableism in any space and definitely not in our learning spaces. The last thing I want to touch on when it comes to ableism and isms is this intersection of race and disability, right? Ableism is one ism, but we also know that there are other isms. There's racism, there's sexism, there's ageism. All of these terms describe prejudice based on a category of demarcation. And I want to draw our attention to two of the most common categories of demarcation that are relevant to the world of neurodiversity and relevant to our learners. Race. Race and disability are categories of demarcation. Of course, race based on skin color and cultural origin. Disability based on functioning or appearance or learning style, right? What these two constructs have in common is that they're both socially invented concepts. The concept of race, right? They're both methods of classifying people. Black, white. Race and disability and any ism can be a system of oppression. And we absolutely know that these isms often perpetuate social hierarchy because we use our power to develop systems and processes that are not accessible to certain categories of people that we've come up with on our own, right? Take a deep breath. I want to close this portion by you just asking yourself, what is your definition of normality? What do you consider normal? Normal behavior, normal thinking, normal processing? And what does your culture consider as normal? What messages have you been sent? Because this is what fuels your view, your desire, and how much you value fostering a learning community and a learning space that embraces neurodiversity. So now that we've taken a bit of a breath, in our last few minutes, we're going to talk about the path forward, right? So what does this actually look like, sound like, feel like in our Outschool community and in our home community? What can you begin doing tomorrow to support embracing neurodiversity at home and school? One is learner agency. So we know that neurodivergent children may learn, behave, and process differently from the general population. These are some beliefs and thoughts of communities that are committed to embracing neurodiversity. We support all learners by helping them develop ways of managing everyday tasks that feel natural to them. Just because I take notes using a certain visual format does not mean you take notes using the same system. Quite frankly, you might not even take notes. You might be recording because that's the way you learn and process best, right? So in these communities, we support learner agency by ensuring all learners have ways of managing everyday tasks that feel natural to them. We also don't expect neurodivergent children to change behavior like stimming if it doesn't interfere with their everyday activities, right? That's a preference of ours. We don't want to assert our prejudice. In communities that embrace neurodiversity, we take collective responsibility for the achievement of all learners. So gains are significantly higher, and this is research in learning communities where teachers and parents take collective responsibility for students' success or failure, rather than blaming students for their own success or failure. Okay. It's about collective responsibility. We're in this together, which is why you will hear me refer to us as a family. Collective responsibility. Teachers, caregivers, and family members share a commitment to the success of neurodivergent learners. Think about it. Are you committed? Are you committed to the success of neurodivergent learners? Whether you consider your learner neurodivergent or not, neurodivergent children benefit from the wisdom and expertise of all members of their learning community. While I may be here today presenting as an expert, know that I am learning and committed to improving every day. I don't think I'd ever consider myself an expert in improving in my ability to make spaces and experiences more accessible. I am continuously thinking about what I need to change, what I can improve. Okay. So know that you have something to contribute to this community. Your wisdom and expertise will help make this community better for all learners. Teachers, parents, and caregivers feel a responsibility to share strategies that are working across settings. If your child is enrolled in an Outschool classroom and you think that there's something important that your child's teacher needs to know, right? Something that's been working at home, something that's been working in your classroom, and you want that child's parent to know, I wonder, what does it look like for us to share those strategies in this community? I see the sweet messages. Thank you, Ms. Ingrid. Another thing I want us to keep in mind is the use of person-first language. When we refer to learners using person-first language, we always put the person before the disability. And here we have to be very careful. If you don't know that a student has an intellectual disability because their parent or guardian has shared that with you, probably not best to say Leah, who has an intellectual disability. But if you know that, then that's the appropriate saying, right? Sean, who uses an assistive communication device. Our learners are people first. We are people first. We use person-first language. And lastly, something I want you to consider before we open up for questions is making your space universally accessible. Whether it's your home school learning space or your virtual community, universal design refers to the way we design an environment so that it's accessed, understood, and used to the greatest extent possible, regardless of a person's age, size, ability, or disability. We want accessible spaces at Outschool, and today In the next 60 seconds, I want you to think about what your commitment is to the Outschool community. In service of Outschool's neurodiverse community in 2023, what are you committing to? Thank you, Stacy. Bridget, thank you. Autistic community prefers autistic person rather than person with autism. Thank you, Bridget, for your helping us, your contribution and wisdom for helping us to get better, including me. Autistic community prefers autistic person rather than person with autism. Thank you, Stacy. Ongoing responsibility, says Denise. If you'd like to share your commitment in the chat, I welcome you to do that right now. You don't have to. Maybe it's a commitment to your family, to your learner. Maybe it's a commitment to yourself, your community. Maybe you're wanting to learn more. I'll share that one of my commitments this year is to begin or continue refining my use of language. I want to continue to make space on my social media platforms by ensuring that my captions are accessible. So I'm working on writing accessible captions. I thank you guys today for your time, for your passion. I'm happy to open up. I know we only have 3 minutes for questions. You can absolutely reach me through www.umojacollective.net or hello@theumojacollective.com. hello@theumojacollective.com. Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Happy to take and accept questions.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for your words, Brittany. It was very impactful. I'm someone who has struggled with speech and language all my life, always felt like I was being forced to learn a certain way. And it wasn't until college that I had a professor who was like, well, you learn differently and this is how you learn. And that professor gave me the courage to speak up and for the rest of my classes. Unfortunately, I didn't learn that till college, but I know that impacted me going into special ed and teaching alternative ed high school and doing things just somewhat unorthodox in education and outside the box, and why we homeschool. So for me, that was just amazing. Thank you for having that discussion. I think we also have some questions here in the chat. Bridget's asking about universal design for learning resources.
Yes, I see you, Bridget. So universal design for learning resources, I would definitely refer to UDL guidelines. So if you just go to like your search bar and you type in UDL guidelines, it will take you to many resources, many different websites that will support you in understanding universal design for learning.
Awesome. And then there was another question that I'm going to bring up. Are you saying children shouldn't have rules or consequences for following the rules? We have to teach children this because if we don't, they will have issues following the rules in society. I see some people don't see stealing as a crime anymore, so they just do it. I know this is a conflicting issue, but I believe there has to be a balance.
Absolutely. I think the bounds of your classroom space, your homeschool space, are totally on you. And I'm not anti-rules, anti-boundaries. But what I will say is it's important for us to critique our rules and boundaries and ask, are they in service of the learner, or are we attempting to control an aspect of their learning, behaving, or thinking that's just based on our preferences? If it's about their safety, their well-being, them growing up to be productive citizens and independent citizens, then yeah, we want to teach those rules and boundaries. But let's be sure to critique what they are.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today. And we are getting questions. How can I get a recording of this session? So again, and I'm going to ask one of our moderators, Sarah, or Cassie, to drop the Outschool YouTube channel in the comments. For parents, all the parent recordings and the keynotes will be on YouTube. For educators, all the recordings will be at pd.outschool.com. Go to the community page and look for 2023 Adventure. I'm going to ask that you give me a week or so to get those recordings up. So thank you, everyone, for your attendance today. I'm going to say goodbye to Brittany here. Thank you so much, and for your grace with my own speech issues, my own speech struggles, full display this morning. So thank you so much, Brittany. We look forward to learning more.